Do you three have it in you to make a final statement about this Michigan NCAA final judgment? Because I don't know that I do. I'm talked out about it.
Yeah, I don't know what else there is to say. It was a total travesty, and they wasted everybody's time for 2 years. This just kind of shows you the disconnect between, the media and the NCAA and enforcement and all these things, because nobody had an idea that vacating wins or seasons wasn't even a possibility as a result of this, and why that committee didn't kick that back up to the board of directors or whoever and say, look, we've got an extraordinary situation here where these people obviously cheated to win football games. We really need to vacate these games. And why that wasn't broached or sent to a higher power or a governing committee to override that stupid ass rule, then that nobody ever foresaw that was going to be a problem, obviously. But, that was the stupid acidest part of it. And then to invoke we didn't want to penalize the innocents who just arrived there, like Bryce Underwood and some of these other people, when one of the people who was intricately involved in this was Sharon Moore, and he's the head coach now at Michigan and is basically off scot-free, other than a couple of years of this meaningless show cause thing, which is a total farce and a total joke. So, I don't know. The whole thing stinks to high heaven. And Michigan gets off of this scot-free. And again, you can do whatever you want. Just write a $10, $15, $20 million check, and you will be absolved of all wrongdoing. So there you go.
Kevin, do you want to go?
I mean, I think Steve took a lot of the good points there at this point. I mean, I think I've kind of just moved on from it. I did one show talking about it and just how toothless it was and sending the wrong message. And again, we know that in 99 out of 100 places in the multiverse, this would be, post-game suspension and, banishment and everything else. But we're in the one place in the multiverse where we don't seem to care about it. And we're just going to, we're going to fine you, and we're going to give that money to NC2A charities and to our end of the year kegger and everything else. And we're going to rent out the bar up top above San Elmo, and it's going to, there'll be punch and pie for all. But, I just think that it's a dark day in enforcement that was the best they could come up with. But, we'll see what future enforcement things look like. Don't you dare touch the third rail on something that they actually do care about, because, then it won't be fines.
We have had recruiting violations in the past, and I won't even touch the Ohio State 2010 situation. That's a whole other matter. That's just a ridiculous comparison that just to this day just irritates me beyond belief. That ruined 3 football seasons for guys that already had accomplished what they accomplished. The wins were already on the board. So suspend them for breaking the rules, but the breaking the rules did not impact the games that they won. Anyway, we've seen other situations where there were like recruiting violations that impacted one player getting on the field, and wins were vacated for the impact of that one player that may have been insignificant, but by the letter of the law stating that, okay, this one player recruiting violations resulted in this player signing with this team or whatever, we're vacating wins. And here we have a situation where the direct correlation is immediate. It's direct. Cheating impacts games. It's even stated 3 times in the summary that the intent was to gain a significant competitive advantage. And so why is that direct correlation not made that this impacts games and championships? That's the whole idea. Then you either say, then we don't fine them at all because they didn't do anything wrong.
Well, but the problem is throughout that entire report is the NCAA detailing that Michigan did a ton of crap wrong, and they lied and they obfuscated, and they attempted to gain an advantage. And they also said a couple of times they did gain an advantage. But when you ask them, well, why wasn't vacating games on the table? It's because, well, that's in the charter and in the rules, it's about ineligible players. That's the only trigger. However, that's not the case because Penn State vacated games for the Jerry Sandusky thing. And so there's also stipulations like things that are like beyond the ordinary can trigger vacating games, but they just didn't even consider that with this one. And, that's whatever. But Michigan fans are convinced that they're celebrating, and I wrote this after the fact. Like the real punishment here is not the fines; it's like it's just the NCAA detailing. Yes, Michigan cheated. Yes, that Jim Harbaugh is corrupt in terms of 14 years now of show causes, and the program you're going to have now another year where next year you're talking to a Michigan head coach about a suspension. And like this is an every year thing. So this is the program that used to say they are above all of the cheating and they do things the right way. And there are still people who tell you they do things the right way. And it's the NCAA's entire report is no, you didn't do things the right way. And one of the first things in the report says a postseason ban is required in this case. And then a couple sentences later, it's like Michigan is also a repeat violator, which would have triggered another postseason ban. So a couple of years ago, this would have been a 2-year postseason ban. But because of the kinder, gentler NCAA, like that's not really on the table any longer. But then they just went on and detailed all of the things that Michigan and Jim Harbaugh did that they did not approve of. So this is not a clean program. This is not Michigan getting away with anything. They didn't get the punishment that a lot of people wanted, but the NCAA is confirming cheating and lying and destruction of evidence. Like how throwing, Connor Stalions talking about throwing his phone and hard drives in a pond. Like Jim Harbaugh never producing actual communication. And when you talk about Harbaugh in that report, so that when you do a control F Harbaugh, and then just in the first couple of pages, these are some of the things that they said about Harbaugh: failure to monitor, violated the principles of head coach responsibility, did not embrace responsibility, had a contentious relationship with Michigan's compliance office, failed to demonstrate that he adequately promoted compliance, and is failed to cooperate, is automatically responsible for the scouting and recruiting violations, and the other members of the staff. One recruiting staff member said the Michigan compliance staff was shitty at their jobs and actively working against us from the inside. True scum of the earth. This is a clean program. And they talk about their compliance department this way. And they talk about the NCAA and the way they treat the NCAA. And, we all say what we want about the NCAA. But this was the NCAA doing the biggest punishment they could do is not the fines. That'll come out of somebody's couch cushions. But throwing out there, this was not a clean program, and Jim Harbaugh is gone because of that. And if he came back, he'd be suspended for a year because of what he's done and not done. And so, yes, Michigan, they didn't get a postseason ban because it wasn't on the table anymore. They didn't get any vacated games because that's not on the table anymore. Doesn't make them innocent of any of this. That's what the NCAA is saying.
Yeah, they were so uncooperative with the investigation, so brazen in their cheating. It's too bad we can't do anything about it. Was kind of the notion in the stupid, readout of the thing. But whatever, the chapter's closed and we move on with our lives. And in November, we will have a rare matchup of the last two national champions, and presumably there'll be a lot on the line. So let's not fast forward to November, though. Let's play the 11 games in the interim and shake it up and see what falls out, as Keith Jackson used to say.
Well, I will tip my hat to Michigan continuing the finest assistant head coaching on the field training program in the history of college football. This will be like 5 consecutive years, whatever it is, 4 consecutive years, that an assistant coach will get the on-the-job head coaching training on game day. So they've got that mastered.
The first low-level recruiting lackey to call plays in Big Ten history. So, yeah.
All right, back to the Buckeyes. Here we go.
Can I say one other thing, Mark?
Sure.
Jim Harbaugh talking about, he once said it's hard to beat the cheaters. He said about Ohio State, they're going to beat Ohio State or die trying. And then suddenly they started beating Ohio State. After he won a national championship in 2023, he was asked what it meant to be a Michigan man. He said, you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal. After leaving Michigan for the NFL, he said, if you cheat to win, you've already lost. And so that's just just one last thing to think about in all of this.
There you go. All right.